intersection of technology, talent, and transformation in the world of HR. I'm your host, Jada, and every week I'll be sitting down with innovators, leaders, and experts who are shaping the future of human resources through cutting-edge technology. We discuss trends, topics, and dive into the tools and strategies that you'll need to attract, retain, and support your most valuable asset, your people. If you're into innovation, making smart hires, and finding the future of work before everyone else does, you're in the right place. So grab your coffee, hit play, and let's get into it. This is From the Desk with Jada Montemarano, where we bring you the hottest HR news from the desk right to you. And I am joined now by Mark Chaffey, the co-founder and CEO of Hackajob, a candidate-centric platform that tech professionals can use to learn new skills, participate in community events, engage directly with employers, and ultimately for people to find their next job. It's a new way of hiring, if you will. So thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today.
Jada, thank you so much for having me on. I love your energy. I love the sparkly top. It's 2025. Let's go.
Yes, let's start it off great. I know for our last round of 2024 interviews, we talked a lot about just the current state of the job market. So I know we'll be getting into that today with you. And speaking of that, I kind of gave a little bit of a description of Hackajob, but for people who don't know, people who are looking for jobs, this seems like a great platform for them. So can you walk us through exactly what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I co-founded Hackajob 10 years ago now, which feels wild. I was in my final year at college. And we basically wanted to create a platform that put the candidate at the heart of the journey. Our view, our hypothesis is that every company in the world is now a technology business. Technology has evolved from a standalone industry to a function that touches every industry. And therefore, your ability to engage, hire, retain technical talent is a real strategic priority. But this is a talent pool that knows they're in demand, that maybe doesn't hang out in the kind of places that other talent pools do, like LinkedIn and Indeed. And so we set out to build a community of technology professionals. That community is now over 1 million members, predominantly in the US, India, and the UK. And the real magic for candidates is that we've completely flipped the model. So rather than candidates applying for jobs, actually they sign up to the platform, they go through our kind of onboarding and screening process, and then we flip it. Companies make the first move and actually pitch to the candidate. And so this removes all of the spam that if you're a really great data scientist or machine learning engineer, you might get, but also in turn creates really high engagement for employers. So employers get a 90% response rate when they're reaching out to members in our community.
And you kind of touched on that a little bit. Can you expand on that? How is it weeding out the candidates who maybe apply but aren't great for the jobs? I know when I spoke to some industry professionals on the other end, they'll say that companies get hundreds and hundreds of maybe a little bit forged resumes. So how does that weed that problem out?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think the biggest complaint I've heard from our customers over the last 18 months is this just crazy increase in direct applications. One thing that's really important on Hackajob is candidates can only create one profile. So I only get the opportunity to spotlight what I'm really good at once. Whereas what is going on in the market right now is there are a bunch of AI tools that are rewriting resumes based on a job description, which I think you're alluding to in your question. And in that one profile, the candidate gets to spotlight what they want, their salary preferences, their visa status, their location preferences, the tech stack they want to work with. And we will validate those things as they go through our onboarding process. We'll validate their technical skills. We'll validate that, their compensation's in line with where we'd expect it to be with their skill set, their background, and the market, etc. And so what we're really trying to focus on is relevancy on both sides. I do not believe these tools that enable you to apply for 200 jobs with a customized resume for each job are good for candidates. Actually, all it's doing is creating more noise and people aren't hearing back. And it clearly isn't good for employers. So instead, we're focused on how do we create really relevant connections between the individual and the employer.
And I know there are some sites like this for more of like the gig economy workers if you need someone to edit something once, but this is more for those full-time jobs?
Yeah, our history and our kind of expertise started in full-time perm, and that's what we did for the first 9.5 years. So, we get to work with some of the largest organizations in the world, like American Express and Disney, and their talent teams on Hackajob every single day, finding the next permanent team members that are going to join them. About 6 months ago, we did launch Hackajob On Demand to play in the gig economy space. Kind of weird because everyone's always been like, it feels almost more suited to the gig economy space than maybe the perm space, but we always knew the perm space was a kind of harder nut to crack. So if we could get that right, we would layer in on demand. At some point, I didn't know it'd take us 9.5 years, but it did. And so that's actually now our fastest growing segment, unsurprisingly, in this kind of macro environment. People are turning a lot more to kind of contingent labor.
I was going to say that. You said, oh, it took 9.5 years, but honestly, you're doing it at the right time where gig workers are basically everybody just wants to work for themselves and do these odd jobs here or there. And I assume in the tech space, there are probably a lot of gig tech workers, right? Can you explain maybe what some of these jobs, I guess, for the full time or the gig side that people are finding on this site?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of our million members, about 60% are focused on full-time perm jobs, and about 40% are focused on gigs. So you can kind of see the kind of split there. Tech is this ever growing world. So we actually cover 200 different job titles on the platform right now. And one of our kind of best pieces of content we release each year is like what skills are growing the most in demand and what skills are dropping the most in demand. In 2024, the biggest skill that grew in demand was Python. It's such a versatile language that it's used to build web applications. It's used in platform engineering, but it's also used in data science. And, with a lot of the LLM applications that are being built and a lot of the applications that are being built, a lot of them using Python and using PySpark to do that. So we kind of have six core categories that we focus, and the kind of three biggest are software engineering, AI and data, and DevOps and cloud. But yeah, behind that, 200 different job titles and about 1 million different skills.
And you mentioned these skills and that you do an assessment. Obviously, that's very different than an interview and getting to know someone maybe for another type of job. And you said there is that vetting. So, how do you guys do that? How do you know someone is able to do these things that I wouldn't even know where to even start? So,
Yeah, there's three different ways a candidate can verify their technical skills on HackerJob. The first is we've built a cloud-based IDE, which is effectively a cloud-based programming environment. It supports every modern programming language and framework, and it gives the candidate the ability to demonstrate their skill set. And this is typically in more of those kind of entry, junior, mid-level roles where you don't have as much professional experience to kind of demonstrate your skills. The next way candidates can do it is linking their open source projects. So, a lot of engineers will play around with projects and put them on GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, and we've built some tech that enables us to go in and analyze those. The final way we'll do it for the more kind of experienced talent is really focus on their work experience. We always joke there's probably an inverse correlation between how well an engineer can write a resume and how good they are as an engineer. And so actually we've done a really great job of supporting engineers focus on the things that employers want to know, which is like, what problem were you solving? How did you solve it? And what technologies did you use to solve that challenge? And so that's the way we'll do it. I will give a sneak peek.
ooh.
We've been working on some very, very exciting tech that will go live to a subset of our community next week. We've definitely not talked about this publicly yet. And
Exclusive
it's
scoop.
obvious.
Look at that. I didn't even have to try.
Yeah, and I definitely didn't tell our team I was going to say this on this session either, which is great. But we're really interested in how you can use LLMs to better highlight somebody's strengths. So we've got so much data that says, unfortunately, most companies when they're scanning resumes are just keyword matching, and actually that isn't necessarily the most productive way. But if that's true, how can we get candidates to better tell their story? And I think resumes are like an awful document. It's
Yep.
like this 2D piece of paper. Yeah, it's a Word doc that doesn't really tell you anything. And it's like, actually, we're really excited to see how you can leverage AI interviewers, how you can leverage LLMs to give a much richer, like 3D version of an individual. And so that's, like I said, that's going live to a subset of our users next week. I don't know if I was actually allowed to say that publicly, but anyway, it is, and we'll be rolling that out more broadly over the coming months.
And on that note, I know we're talking a lot about your company and Hack a Job and everything you're doing there, but of course, this is one service for tech workers, right? And we're talking about resumes and how they may not be the best. So, from your knowledge in your very niche corner of the job market, how do we expand this for other job seekers out there that maybe don't have the luxury of having a Hack a Job for their applications?
Yeah, it's so interesting. What the biggest debate we've had for 10 years, bigger than the gig economy one, is should we expand this beyond tech? And there's a lot of customers and a lot of candidates that want us to do that. I think the model that we've built works really well where there is generally more demand than supply. So there are generally more candidates, so generally more jobs than there are candidates available to fill those jobs. So if you look at America or the US, what are some other kind of professions that fit that? Generally really strong sales talent. Healthcare is actually probably the biggest job category where that is right now. And, our investors have invested in other platforms like that. In the UK, there's a great business called Florence. In Germany, there's a great business called ZenJob that are focusing on different job categories that kind of take this model. I think when you get into more high volume recruitment, it's more challenging to take our model bluntly. When you've got 1,000 applications and you can hire 50 of them, it is a much harder model where effectively the employer has more power. What I would really love to see from employers is more transparency. Like that's really one of the big things that we focus on. I feel like there is a information advantage to employers that hire 1,000 people a year versus somebody that gets one job every 2 years. And so actually just I think giving a lot more transparency, regardless if it's high volume recruitment or more specialist recruitment, I think would enable a lot better candidate experience. So watch your space. I don't think HackerJob's going to go into it, but always happy to talk to any other founders or entrepreneurs out there that are looking at doing HackerJob for a different vertical.
And I was going to say, obviously, it's your technology. You're not going to be giving that out to other companies. But do you think what you're doing with this swipe right model and giving the kind of power to the job seeker, do you think you are maybe revolutionizing the market? Do you see anyone trying to copy what you're doing for, like I said, other industries?
Yeah, I think that the two-sided marketplace, I think, is the natural extension of recruitment. And my view is every staffing agency will need some version of this, or I don't think they're going to exist bluntly, because it's just such a better candidate and recruiter experience. And ultimately, they're going to go to where that's done better. I think there's going to be a lot of disruption with AI and LLM-based talent products. There's some interesting ones out there already. They're not at scale yet. But I think that does definitely change the game a lot. In terms of people that operate in our space but different segments, Indeed Flex is a good partner of ours, and they're very good at doing more hourly kind of blue collar work. Like I said, there's Florence in the UK, there's ZenJob in Germany, who we're pretty close with, and there's definitely others out there. And I'd encourage there to be more. I don't mind competition at all. I think it forces us all to be better. One of the best books I've ever read is Only the Paranoid Survive, and I think sometimes the team do think I'm a little bit paranoid. But yeah, that's generally how we're thinking about it, and I think paranoia drives us to innovate. And the tech that's out there at the moment is very, very exciting to be playing around with.
Well, you said you were paranoid that you weren't getting into the gig workers economy fast enough, but you did it.
Eventually, we'll do it all. We'll be doing this in this conversation in 10 years' time. Maybe we will be doing every vertical. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll have to follow back up. And you did mention AI in just the industry in general, right? In hiring, in tech jobs, AI is taking over everything, whether people like it or not. So let's start first by talking about how have you guys used AI in a positive way when people sometimes get a little bit scared of it, and then we'll talk about the industry as a whole.
Yeah, totally. So I think the first thing it says AI is not new, right? Alan Turing popularized the concept in like the 1950s. And so ever since our founding, we used a branch of AI called machine learning, which was just a better way to recommend candidates to companies. Quite straightforward. Um, where AI has got everyone really excited is ChatGPT coming out in whenever it was, October 2023, and this kind of popularization of large language models, which is really, really exciting. And so what is a large language model? Well, effectively, a computer can now understand natural language and reason back to you in that language. So if you take that to recruitment, before how online recruitment's done, it's just been keyword matching because a computer can't understand the context behind the keyword. They can just say, hey, this candidate knows Python and Django because it says it in their resume and its job description says Python and Django. So you guys are a match. What we've been able to do with HackerJob Intelligence, which is our AI driven platform, is effectively HackerJob Intelligence will read a candidate's resume like a recruiter would, be able to reason, oh, okay, so you've used PySpark, therefore you've done some work with Python, therefore you could be a good fit for this role. And we've got our whole knowledge graph in the background that supports that. And then most importantly, reason back to the user, hey, this is why this candidate's a really good fit. And you may disagree with hacker job intelligence. I always want to say like they, them, because I'm like, it is like a machine. Um, and that's great because if you disagree, you tell hacker job intelligence, and then it will learn and make better recommendations. So that's where it's really powerful. I think where it's being used more broadly in the industry, it was so funny. I went to HR Tech in Vegas. I didn't go in 24, but I went in 2023, and every company was suddenly an AI company, right? It's like companies I've known for like 5 years were like pivoting to like, hey, we're now an AI business. And I think the one kind of word of caution I would say to customers is like, it really doesn't matter if a vendor is using AI or not. It matters, does their product solve your problem? Like focus on business problems. Does this piece of technology help us solve that problem? And if it does, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter what underlying technology it's using.
And in that note, we're talking about AI, like you said, is maybe around longer than the general public knows. So maybe it is not as new. But what other technology are you excited about? Are there new trends that you're excited about in this recruiting kind of job market space other than AI?
I think the rate of it's almost too broad to just say AI now because the rate of development with AI is so quick. And I did a podcast just before Christmas and I said, like, I've never said, I used to think, but now I think more than in like the last 6 months because technology is evolving so quickly. So I think the most interesting next set of use cases we'll see are the more reasoning models where actually rather than me giving a search or a chat prompt now and expecting a quick response, actually being able to say to an AI, "Hey, here's my requirements. Go and take a day to think about those requirements, come back with a short list of candidates, etc., and use a lot more reasoning in that." And I think that could be really, really interesting. Outside of that as a technology platform, I'm really interested in how that is applied to improve candidate experience because I think it very, very easy to focus these solutions on like, oh, the company side and how we can make hiring more efficient, etc. And often we forget about actually, well, how are these tools going to benefit the candidate? And any piece of tech out there that is actually creating a better candidate experience, I think will ultimately end up winning.
Yeah, I think right now the major issue everybody is seeing and what a lot of these conversations on this show have been about is how bad it's been for the job seeker, how bad that experience has been, people getting ghosted from interviews or applying to jobs that hundreds of people are applying to and then they don't hear back and all of that. Do you think there is a way that technology will help that, or really do we need some human aspects to it as well? Because I totally understand when people aren't hearing back from jobs they're applying to, they feel unhuman, you know?
I think you have to have both. I think we that work in the recruitment industry that are used to seeing hundreds, thousands of people getting jobs all the time can often forget just how stressful the job search experience is. If you search, my job search is on Google search, then look at like the auto completes. It's like 10 of the worst words you could use, right? Like soul destroying, stressful, all of this stuff. And so I think we really do need to put ourselves in the candidate's shoes. I think what AI will probably enable us to do is personalization at scale. So you absolutely are going to need a human in the loop at some part in the recruitment process. And especially when you're recruiting skills where there are more jobs than candidates, for sure, you're going to need a recruiter in that process to deliver that white glove experience, to really focus on why that individual should choose you. And that can only be done by humans. The flip side of that, where there are more candidates than there are jobs, I think it's that personalization at scale. It's actually about ensuring, okay, cool, who is the best fit for that? Based on skills, not based on a resume, which I think I'm really excited by. And then being able to make sure we follow up with everyone, make sure we keep everybody in the loop. And yeah, there probably is a human in that loop on the company side, but they're enabled with some really powerful tools that enable them to do that.
And every job is different. I am in the communications world, so obviously that person on person interaction is important to know like what my personality is like. But with your company and focusing on these tech jobs, do you think that allows you to use more of the technology to help technology jobs. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, of course it does. I think what's really interesting, everyone talks about like job displacement and using AI, like, how are people going to get displaced from jobs? And actually the two use cases it looks most prevalent for right now are customer service jobs and then software engineering jobs themselves. It's almost like the technologists have built some technology that might put technologists out of a job. Now, I don't believe that, but there is a lot of people online that are kind of going with that mantra. I think that one benefit we have by serving this community of over 1 million technologists is generally they're early adopters. Generally, they want to play around with new tools, they want to play around with new technologies, and they love giving feedback. So we've got such an engaged community. Our product team, there's like a product channel that we have in Slack that is just feedback from users. And it is like just going off constantly all day. And it just shows that there's still so much more for us to do. So definitely we benefit from early adopters in kind of both on the employer side, working with engineering teams, and in our community of having over 1 million technologists. But I don't think that should stop companies using this tech in other fields, in other industries.
And you mentioned that you're getting a lot of feedback. Maybe you want it, maybe you don't. But taking this now to a broad audience for the job seekers or any companies that may be watching, what are some of the feedback you're getting that could be used for a general audience, maybe not as particular to Hack a Job itself?
Yeah, we ran a webinar just before Christmas about some pricing models, and somebody was asking us just for some general advice on job search. And I think that outside of HackerJob, if I was looking for a job, I would never apply for a job directly. The most powerful thing that you can do is find or guess who the hiring manager is. And that is not the person who posted the job on LinkedIn. I got into a whole debate on this. So normally the person that posts a job on LinkedIn is the internal recruiter. No harm DMing them, but they will probably get DM'd all the time. Instead, let's say it's a senior software engineer role. I'm going to go onto LinkedIn. I'm going to try and figure out who's the head of software engineering, who's the software engineering manager. Even easier if it's a smaller organization, just find the CEO and send them a cold email. Whenever we are hiring, it will amaze me. Every time we open a role, there'll be a handful of people that will send me a cold email. They will boost my ego. They'll say something lovely about me, and they will get a response 100% of the time. And we've had people off the back of it that, first reached out to me, and I'll direct them to the hiring manager. So I think it's almost the inverse of these auto apply to 200 jobs with a customized resume, right? It's like, well, if that's what everyone's doing, maybe I should do the opposite and actually spend the time, research the company, and reach out to the CEO, reach out to the hiring manager. That is my biggest piece of advice for candidates trying to find work. On the employer's side, I think employers right now have a real risk of only hiring people that apply directly. And the challenge that you have when you only hire people that apply directly is that's only a subset of the market. If I don't know your organization, I don't know your hiring, and therefore I am not going to apply. And this then comes back to, but what is the job of recruitment teams inside companies? Is it to hire anybody for the role, or is it to hire the best person for the role? And the best doesn't mean the most skilled, the most experienced, the highest salary. It means the best fit for that role. And my view is internal recruitment teams should be focused on finding the best fit for that role. So I think that yes, everyone's inundated with applications right now, but I think people need to diversify their channels and ensure that they are finding ways to increase their audience, which sounds counterintuitive. Two bits of counterintuitive advice. And I think that will ultimately lead to a better quality of hire.
And that's what's funny, kind of wrapping up this conversation here. I like to be a little bit of the devil's advocate because it's not only you who I've spoken to now on the show that has told me that reach out directly, have those human conversations, but you all run these hiring tech companies. So what's that juxtaposition like for you to know that it is more beneficial to reach out one on one, but you also have a company that uses the technology to find the jobs?
Yeah, so I think somebody used this phrase internally, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's so good." Why I'm very comfortable recommending people to reach out directly is because actually, what we've built at HackerJob is a trusted, safe space for candidates, and so you can go onto our Trustpilot and just read the reviews. Like, actually, candidates really enjoy our experience, and they really trust this. That I'm going to sign up to HackerJob, and then let companies reach out to me. Great, it's almost like my job search is on autopilot in the best way possible. Now, Does every single candidate that sign up to HackerJob get hired through HackerJob? Of course they don't, right? Like that, maybe one day they will, but not today. So absolutely they should still be reaching out to companies directly. Absolutely they should be keeping an eye, elsewhere. Hopefully in the future we build a platform and an ecosystem where they don't need to do that. They can do it all for us. But I think that I'm really proud of how much our community trusts us. And therefore, you've seen people on HackerJob get hired 3, 4, 5 times. Like that's magical. And that's definitely what we want to try and create for everyone.
And I hope that's created for other industries. That's why I asked you earlier, because it seems like such a no brainer process to do it that way. And it would be great if it was for other industries like mine in communications, and I can just have my little profile and see what jobs would be interested to me.
Maybe one day maybe we can collaborate and do it on communications together.
Let's do it. I have no tech skills, so I'm going to owe that all to you.
We can do that. We'll make it work.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, for joining us as well and listening in. You can catch us every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. If you're hungry for other Purple Acorn shows, head to purpleacornnetwork.com and Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. See you next time at From the Desk with Jada Montemarano.